One again.
Oops, sorry, I'm sorry. Time to talk about independent developers and the challenges they're facing in such a competitive industry, especially in this moment.
And these 5 guys are really interesting because, as Ivan said, they are independent, so they started from their little companies in different parts of the world. Where are they?
Well, we have Minh, the co-creator of Counter-Strike, who currently is in Seoul, in Korea. We have Dino Patti, who I guess is in Copenhagen with his new startup Jumpship. We have Rami Ismail, seated down in Amsterdam, in his hometown Amsterdam. Charlie Cleveland, who is the creator of Subnautica, the big hit Subnautica, who is in Seattle. And
Alvaro
Azofra from beautiful Montevideo, a small but very interesting company called Ironhide, doing this amazing game that if you haven't played, you should play, that is Kingdom Rush. The 5 of them will be talking about what are the challenges as successful independent developers.
Yeah, and I'm sure that this is a talk that it will resonate with many of you. Many of you that are starting to create your own companies, developing your games, and thinking big.
We're talking about technology, creativity, business, all the things that you're facing in your businesses and careers. And we're going to listen their advice and their vision.
So many tips that you will be able to apply to your own life and to your own careers. Time to say hello?
Yeah, let's say hello. Let's see if all of them are connected. Hello? Hello, Dino, Rami, Charlie, Minh, and Alvaro?
Thank you so much, Elena, Ivan. Happy Gamelab to all of you out there. Good afternoon. This is going to be an incredible panel. We have some great speakers, and we're going to be talking about the current challenges for game developers and a little bit about creating a vision. I have some incredible panelists with me, like I said. We have Minh, Alvaro, Azofra, Dino Patti, and Charlie Cleveland. I'll let all of you introduce yourself before we get started. We'll start with Minh.
Sure. So, hi everyone. It's great to be here. I want to thank Ivan for having me. It's a shame I can't be there in person because I really love Barcelona. But my name is Minh, and I guess I've been involved in the game industry for over 20 years now, mostly focusing on FPS games. My first game was Counter-Strike, and ever since then I've been making some pretty crappy games. Nothing worth talking about.
Hello everyone, I am Azofra. I'm one of the co-founders of Ironhide Game Studio, along with Pablo and Gonzalo, and we create the Kingdom Rush saga and also Iron Marines mobile games, but we also port them to PC and consoles.
Dino?
Thank you. Yes, I've been involved in the game industry since 2003 professionally. I built a company called Playdead that made Limbo and Insight. Since then, I built another game company called Jumpship, where I'm executive producer. and I'm also running a company called Coherence, located in Sweden.
And Charlie?
I'm Charlie Cleveland. I've also been in the game industry about 20 years. I started with a mod called Natural Selection. Then I founded a company with my friend Max, and we made Natural Selection 2. And most recently, we're known for Subnautica, and I'm the design director.
Awesome. So yeah, this is a panel of very varied voices and very different perspectives in the industry. Everybody makes quite different games as well. But I do think there is definitely something interesting here in that most of us, the games that most of us made would be described as maybe a little stubborn. And I think I want to start with that because for all of you, you could say that the games that you've made were different and stood out because they were different or because they were really good at being a specific something. And I just kind of want to start with, is that where you start? Or is that a place that you find through prototyping or through, like, do you start with like an idea or do you just play around until you get somewhere?
I mean, I start with an idea and then I'm super, super stubborn until it's done. I mean, Natural Selection 2 took over 8 years. I mean, that was just like a huge amount of work. I know Dino's had some long developments too. I think Minh probably too, but you have to be stubborn if you want to get your original idea done. I mean, you don't have to be, but it helps.
Yeah. I've always found that with the games that I made, actually, it really helps to get it in the hands of the players as soon as possible because it lets me see whether or not the game has legs. So I can sort of, get some feedback right away. And for the games that I worked on, like they're multiplayer games, so it's important to actually get the feedback as soon as possible, as opposed to, like, I think if I was working on a single player game, I could sort of kind of got to work on it in a kind of like internal environment. But I find with multiplayer games, it's really important to really get that feedback sooner because it's just multiplayer games, they require so much interaction with the players, and it's hard to play test internally. So
I will say for an open world game, like something like what Dino's making, I think it'd be a little easier to do with, to polish it up and tighten it up. If you're doing an open world single player game, I don't know. I can't imagine doing that without the community playing the crap out of that for years.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because I was involved with Rust for 4 years. I wasn't the lead designer, but I kind of saw how it evolved from its small little idea to what it is now, which is huge. And that game started really early access, and it's exactly as you described it. It's kind of like this open world. Well, it's very multiplayer, so I guess in a way it's kind of what I was talking about with Counter-Strike. But yeah, definitely getting feedback from the players early on, it really helps guide me personally. Yeah.
I mean that works for multiplayer games, obviously. Dino, Alvaro, is that similar for you two? Is that very early on?
It depends on the moment of the company, but I think that the one thing that we keep is, of course, we start with an idea, but on that idea and how we make it happen, we also weight the market and how we will stand out with that idea. What's new, what we are adding to the genre, what we are adding to the experience that nobody else is doing, or nobody else is doing the way we envision. So that is important. Since we are also a mobile company, thinking about monetization very early, how do we plan to monetize this game? It is very important because if you do it too much later, it could really damage the game experience. If you think of it, or at least have a general idea, okay, if we go along this line, it's a more solid concept.
Yeah, just to drive this, your original question, I of course feel that the vision and the starting thoughts are really important and maybe the most important. But testing with users is also equally important. If you're doing something which is being played and beaten up by players, you need to have them trying, and they usually do things you didn't think of. right? I would say with single player, of course, you cannot really do early access, so you just do internal testing. It's kind of the same, maybe in a smaller scale, but it also gives, I think, there's more quality to it because you can see each and every single player. You can see their facial expressions. You can see how they feel about the game. Even not asking them like anything, you can actually just look at the experience. You can see how long time they take. You can see like difficulties and so on in the game. So yeah,
we do that.
Are any of you doing it?
Of course.
Yeah.
YouTube.
I was just
YouTube
going to ask: Are any of you doing that right now? Because like we're testing a game right now in Vlaanderen, and it's kind of hard doing it when you can't actually invite people over or like watch them at events. Like events are a major playtesting playground for us, but right now it's. Are any of you doing any testing right now, like externally or internally?
We are not in Jumpship, but we talked a lot about just doing, I'm not so much into streaming technology, sorry, but to be honest, streaming technology could be used for intimate testing with users right now. So, they stream the content, so they don't even have executable. We're talking about experiments with that, so we can do testing from all around the world. Still like one person at a time, looking at them, having a camera, watching them.
Yeah, we're working with Subnautica Below Zero, which is developed in the public, like through early access, and that's invaluable for that team. But we're also working on another game, which we haven't released in any form, and it's so difficult. I just don't even know how. I mean, you just have to I guess you look at individual players, like your friends who play the game, and you just kind of look at their expression.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah,
it's difficult.
It's interesting. You bring up an interesting point. I remember when I was working on Tactical Intervention, which was kind of like Counter-Strike, but it was totally internal development. We didn't have any opportunity to test it with players outside of our company. So I ended up having to write bots for it, and the bots would basically kind of try to kind of simulate the human experience, but in the end, it didn't really. It couldn't replace the human experience as well as we wanted. So I think with the game industry becoming so crowded now, there's just so many games out there. It's really hard to get people to play your game. To be honest, I mean, even if you put it out in early access, there's no guarantee that it's gonna gain a lot of testers. So it's a big challenge, I find, with multiplayer game testing. So I'm not sure. I mean, maybe if someone comes up with a kind of like a form of like getting the game developers in touch with game testers, that would be a really great service. I mean, as a game developer, I would pay for a service like that if something existed. But yeah.
I mean, over the past few weeks, we've kind of seen there was the Steam thing where a lot of indies were releasing demos all of a sudden again. Like, I don't know, have any of you done them? Yeah. I think, Dino, you've done demos before, but...
Yeah.
sorry. I've never done a demo. Yeah.
But I think it's a lost art. I feel that all older games, shareware, they had a lot of demos. We really, really wanted it for Limbo. It was super important to be able to, because we knew it was a good game, and we just wanted it in the people's hands. So it's a demo is the best way to go. I hate free-to-play because I feel that also goes back to you trying to ruin the experience and then getting money, fixing the experience a tiny bit, where the demo is just, give a free piece, and then in the end, we can decide to buy the game. I love that experience. And we had a crazy good conversion rate on Xbox, which was the first platform we released on with Limbo.
Oh, because so did you release a demo for Limbo? Oh, sorry.
Sorry?
Did you release a demo of Limbo on the Xbox?
Yeah, so on the Xbox, this for me, this was the best demo experience that's ever been on a console, and I don't get why they don't have that now on the Xbox. But you essentially, first of all, we were Summer of Arcade, so it was highlighted for a whole week. You download the game, you play until a certain part, and at that part, it stops. and it says, do you want to buy the game or not? We can even make the screen, it was a point where the boy was captured, and do you want to free the boy? Yes or no? Buy the game, $10, what it was, $15 maybe. And they bought the game, and we did the same for Steam. Also, it was a bit more hard. Steam had something where it had to be kind of two different games, and it's not really easy to link them together and link the experience. I think we in the end find out a way to save the save game in the demo. But yeah, I feel that demo experience is really important for games.
I mean, I guess nowadays a lot of people are doing early access. I mean, we've had experience with Flounder with that. Charlie, you've had experience with that.
Been doing early access for like 20 years in some form. Yeah. Like with Minh, releasing the game. Yeah, we released original natural selection. There wasn't even a game. It was just like a map pack. It was a bunch of textures and then a Word document to basically tell people how to make maps for this non-existent game. But we got feedback right away. We started recruiting team members. Like we built a team off that, and it just slowly grew from there. Yeah, I can't. That's just, it's in our blood. We release story updates, and then we change them. We change voice actors in early access. We remove huge features. We add new features. I mean, it can be messy, but I feel like to me, the most important thing is the final game. And hopefully you have to believe that even though early access has become a huge spectacle, we have to believe that the people who are buying early access would rather the game get better, and you get some refunds along the way because the game actually changes so much. But I think people are generally, they've been pretty darn supportive, even when they see big threatening changes. So
we've had some stories there. I'm actually curious, Alvaro, what are your thoughts on all this? Because you're not really in a place where you do either,
we cannot do early access. It's not part of our platforms. So we do let's say the old school, right? Yes, we test with friends and family, we test inside the company, then we go to beta testers, and just at point forward, all our testing, maybe we never do a soft launch, but maybe when we launch the game and on beta test, we just read the metrics. We do not get very specific player feedback. We get the comments, and we try to see more the biggest pain points, but it's a lot of work if we do it earlier, and we also like to bring them a polished experience, because we don't want to say, that the icon sucks or this is horrible, and that we know we are going to change. So that process of iterating with players from early on, we envision it as very expensive in the way you are going back and forward. But we never did it. So I just hearing you guys about your experience. So for us, testing is simple. It's not very expensive for the process.
So wait, up until launch, you only do internal testing. You don't do a soft launch. You just or you do.
We do a beta with our fan base. That's 100 people mostly, and from the 100, not too many answer. We give them a form with some specific questions, Google form with some specific questions that where we are trying to see, depending on, there's maybe a trick question, or what's the tower you like the worst. So if a lot of people answer that, we may look into that tower, or we may not. We may be a little stubborn, and we know that's the tower we introduce at the end of the game, so they don't like it very much because they already fell in love with the early towers. So you have to be very careful with that feedback, because you cannot actually talk to them.
Speaking of feedback, that's actually an interesting one. I mean, in early access, you obviously get a lot of feedback. From our experience with Nuclear Throne, you get a lot of bad feedback as well. You just get all sorts of feedback, right? Dino, I mean, I guess for you, a lot of that happens between games, and Minh, for you, I guess it happens as the game evolves or grows. How do you like, you have a vision, you want to make this game, you want to make a shooter, you want to make a mystery game, you want to make a submarine game, you want to make a tower defense, like you have this idea, and then feedback starts coming in. How do you deal with that? Is it just like, do you listen to people? Do you just look at the metrics? Like, what is the healthiest way of handling that?
Well,
for your game,
I think for me,
for you.
yeah, when I worked on Counter-Strike, like I don't I don't actually make this public information to the public, because if they knew how I took their feedback, they would actually game it. They would game my mind. So what I usually did was I would listen to feedback. I would keep my eye on the forums, right? So if a certain complaint kept coming up for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, then I would address it. Then I would say, okay, this is a serious issue. I'm going to take a look at it. But for the most part, if the complaints, they start to die down after a couple weeks, that's when I know people. This is something people can sort of live with. So I kind of use that metric, as my barometer. But now that I've told people, now they're just gonna game me. They're gonna just wait for 2 weeks. So it's something I don't really.
A month.
Yeah. Yeah.
We actually did a very similar thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a very similar thing.
Yeah,
with
because I
Nuclear
find
Throne,
most people are very vocal for a week or two, and they usually get over it after a couple weeks. But if it persists, then it's a problem.
Yeah, I think people are very reactive to change, right? Like when something changes, their first response is, "I want to go back to what I liked."
Oh,
And
yeah,
then
for sure. I mean,
if after a while they get used to it, then it's fine. Charlie?
yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a great rule of thumb. I think that's solid. We also do we have like in-game qualitative feedback for people. So with Subnautica, we added like a press, I think it was F8 to give feedback. And so when the game starts, like 2 minutes later, it has a pop-up that says press F8 to give feedback. And it brings a full screen interface where you can type something. You can give it like you see the smiley face rating scale at the London airport. I forgot which one it was, but when you go through security and you tap one of the smiley faces, like how good or bad it was. And so we have that, and then you can submit a screenshot, you write something, and then that feedback it used to go to our Slack channel. And then, of course, as we released early access and we get more feedback, we have now we moved it to a separate channel. And now it's like we've gotten feedback. We get at least one per minute every hour of the day, 24/7, forever. So now we write tools because all that goes to the database. And now we run queries to find out CMOth broken, or we run queries to find out where the changes are happening. We don't even read our dirty secret is we can't read the feedback anymore, but we can run queries on the feedback. And so we can see the keywords that are spiking up or down. And actually Clay just did this even better in Grifflands, which they just released on Steam 2 days ago. They have an even better version of this. So check that out.
Oh, so is it similar to yours where the player
it's the same,
manually
but they just get better. Oh. Yeah, it's just a lot more. It's way better.
So Dino,
I've always found manual feedback.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I've always found manual feedback. I'm always kind of questioning the validity of the feedback, because I find people get kind of emotional if you ask them the feedback after they've been annoyed with a particular thing, they'll give you some really nasty feedback that doesn't really. I don't think it's a true reflection of their feelings. So sometimes I'll wait like a couple hours and I'll ask them, how did you feel about the game? So, but yeah, it's the
emotion is real. Like the emotion should be addressed, right? It's just the solution that they tell you may not be the right.
Yeah,
it's almost certainly not the right solution.
Yeah, they're never really good at conveying it. Yeah, like they're never good at conveying their feelings. Yeah, yeah, you kind of have to decipher it. But yeah, it's good to get their feedback for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to validate that emotion and address the emotion. It's like going to a doctor, like we talked about this before, but
sure.
You go to the doctor and you tell the doctor what your symptoms are, and then you don't tell the doctor what you think the fix or remedy should be. That's the doctor's job. Yeah. But it's really important to get the symptoms. So listen to your testers or your players for the symptoms, and then you figure out what to do about it.
Yeah, we have a rule that we always try to figure out. We have a rule that we try to figure out what they're trying to say rather than what they're saying, right? Because sometimes they say this boss is too hard, and what they mean is I didn't have enough ammo, or my weapons aren't powerful enough, or this boss is too early, or I could really use a health kit.
But I think so. We of course developed like really different games, but I would say it's a bit more difficult, in single player games, because you don't want to reveal anything of that publicly, so you can never really do an early access on that. So we always have. You did early access of a single player.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We just all the spoilers. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. We just decided spoilers are okay. It's better to have someone see a video of a spoiler than not to see a video. And we had to make that decision. FYI.
I mean, I can see both approaches, but for your games, you know, like they're obviously small narrative. Like, how do you deal with that? I'm actually curious.
Yeah, and you want some impact also. There's some press that needs to go out, and I don't know. I feel for these games, yeah, we never dared to do it. So we need to test in smaller groups and not just with one-to-one person. And back to the designer question. No, I feel that it's the designer's job to do the decision. And in Playdead, for example, we would never ask anything. We would just sit them down. There would be a designer behind, or 1 to 3 persons behind them, and just seeing their run, seeing where they got stuck, seeing if they smiled, seeing if they seemed to enjoy it. But there would never be a question, do you think this is too hard, or is this too easy? Because there could be a passage that would be crazy too hard for one person and then crazy too easy for another person. So it's all like just a small quantitative thing where have like 5 persons, and then you kind of, as game designer, think this is kind of the difficulty we want. We want maybe I think we said 80 people to be able to get 80% of people to get through it, or whatever. But I feel it's really important that the game designer, I feel, has that job and filters the comments and not too, what's it called? Don't listen too much of random feedback, because I also feel like there's a lot of people that has a lot of opinion on the game, on game design. And if you sit with a game 24/7 and think about it and have a lot of systems in your head, it would be weird if one person who tried the game for 1 hour had a really good idea. I can also see the argument with early access that some of the user base that is crazy experts in the game, suddenly that they have some better quality feedback.
Yeah. We have that with Nuclear Throne.
Oh, sorry, go ahead,
Charlie. No, Charlie, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you don't want to cut off, you don't want to refine all the rough edges off your game either. I mean, I shouldn't say this to Dino, because you do this and it's amazing and inspiring. But you also have a lot of emotion in your games. So you don't, just make sure you don't take so much feedback that you remove all the emotion. It's like if all these people tried to help you paint a painting, that would be the worst painting in the world, because of all these people pulling these directions, and then you end up with a formless mass. It's like it doesn't mean anything to anyone. So that's where vision.
But so I'm not I'm not into movies, but what I hear happens for several stories where they show a movie at a pre-showing, people get out, they feel very sad in the end, and then they change the end so people feel better. And I feel like as a game designer, you should also be able to take the choice that it needs to be sad in the end, or this needs to be a frustrating moment.
That plays into something interesting that I think would be interesting to talk about as well, because all of our games, I think for all of us, we started this conversation with the word stubborn, right? But really, I don't really mean stubborn. I mean sticking to a certain vision. Is there ever a point in sort of your feedback side? For example, Alvaro, you're making very interesting games in that they are very similar to games that people know in some ways, like tower defense games. People have this set of expectations, but you have this vision of a different type of tower defense, right? A unique type of tower defense that stands out. When you get feedback and people say hey, I would like it to be more like that, how do you choose whether to stick? Do you always stick to your vision? Is that
I think that you have to be a little stubborn on the vision, but you have to question the way it materializes, something like we talked yesterday. But you also have to be able to read between the lines of what they are saying. You said something similar. What the player is actually saying is something different what's actually saying from the game. Or maybe even some bad feedback can be a good feedback. For example, if this stage is terribly hard, and you design the stage to be terribly hard, that's actually good feedback, because it comes from a player that may not be a hardcore on the genre or a midcore, maybe a casual player. So it needs to learn some lessons to go through, just to make a simple example. So I think that you have to really balance from who the feedback comes, what this says, and it adds to your vision or what you're doing or not. So it may change the game into another RTS game. I can put some example when making Kingdom Rush, and we added the powers, the meteorites, and the reinforcements. Some a player that was a hardcore of RTS games, and I respect his opinion a lot, he would say, "No, this forces me to be doing things all the time. I just want to place my strategy," and that's actually good feedback. Say, okay, but I want you to be doing things all the time because that is fun for most of the players. So actually, that bad feedback was good feedback for me. But on other points, just one little more. It's more about the language of the game. So if they are understanding the vision that you're having, if they are not understanding the vision and you are not able to convey it, maybe that's where you have to question some of the ways you are materializing.
Minh, you're also like working on games that are evolutions of things that a lot of people know, but playing with them in different ways. Is that the same for you? Are you from the start, when you have this idea of this is the experience that I want to make, do you always keep the confidence in that all the way through to the end, or are there moments where you like tweak sort of at the core of the game as well?
Actually, I tend to with the games. Well, previously, actually, to be honest, the only game that was successful I made was Counter-Strike. The other games, they were kind of failures. So I can't really draw much.
You're inspired by yourself, which is a genre.
Well, yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like when people do give feedback, and if I kind of have to feel for it. If there's enough pushback to it, I will change my vision accordingly, because I don't want to alienate too many players. Because I learned a pretty hard lesson when I made tactical intervention. I threw a lot of ideas that I think they were just too new to a lot of players, and so I didn't take a lot of the feedback into that because I felt that a lot of players were kind of confused actually with a lot of the mechanics that I was introducing to them, so they couldn't really relate to it. Like a lot of them were expecting Counter-Strike, like they were just expecting the same game mechanics of Counter-Strike. So I think I alienated a lot of old school Counter-Strike players with a lot of the things that I was trying to do with tactical intervention. So I think in that respect, I think I made a mistake in not being more flexible in my game design decisions with that game. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean that's a lesson that I take with me in my current projects. Yeah.
You say it like it's part of it sounds like a regret. Part of it sounds like something that you're happy you learned, so you can take it into the future. Like which?
Yeah, it was a mistake, but it was an expensive mistake that I made. So, I mean, I wish I could have learned it much quicker, because I spent 8 years in that game, and like, to be honest, if I could have just condensed it in 2 or 3 years, it would have been obviously it would have been better. But yeah, it was kind of an expensive mistake, but it's something that's sticking with me.
That's what you say.
Yeah, exactly. The more it hurts, the better it stays in my head. So yeah.
Charlie,
I wanted to say something after Alvaro. You said that you took that negative feedback and you realized it was actually positive feedback, because they were kind of telling you that they weren't the right person for your game and that your game was different. That actually happened with us for Subnautica, because we had so many people that would get frustrated because it would like take too long to build. I don't know, their Cyclops submarine, something like that. But we found that the more frustrated they would get, as long as they kept playing, when they finally did it, it turned into exhilaration. All the frustration flipped into exhilaration, and those were the biggest moments. Those moments made our game. They made our game stand out. They made our game sell. It made it memorable. Made the game people would recommend the game to other people. So we could have, if we had filtered out all the negative emotion without looking at all the the context of the emotion, we would have lost all the juice in our game.
Yeah,
it's fun. It's fun. One of my favorite games. I tried to get an item for 8 months, playing every week, a very difficult thing that I had to get 6 people together for. And I talked to one of the designers at the company. I said, like, listen, I've been doing this forever. I really don't. And the designer just said, like, but you're still playing. I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, working has to do that. I got the item eventually, and it was the best moment in the game. But also,
what game was that? What game was that?
It was Destiny. But it was really interesting because it exuded a certain confidence in that vision that I find it really hard to have that much confidence always. Like sometimes when I'm working on a game, we have like sort of, because Vlambeer, we don't quite start with a vision. We're just kind of like throwing mechanics at a wall, and then a mechanic sort of sticks, and we develop it for a little while, and then we like see if it's fun to work on more than fun to play, because in the end we have to make it, not play it. And then from there we kind of like greenlight the process. So I think it sounds like all of you, maybe Minh works in kind of a similar way to us, but it sounds like most of you sort of start from abstract idea and then develop around that. I think we're just like, oh, it's fun to smack this thing with a sledgehammer. Let's make a video game that has sledgehammers, right?
In board games, it's either theme first or
edition.
Sorry?
Yeah. In board game design, you start with mechanics first or theme first, and there's always this eternal debate. Which one's better to start with? Well, they're just different. Different games will appear different. Will start differently. Different designers work different ways. It just changes. So we kind of, I generally start with theme, but actually I've started with mechanics too. New game is mechanics first. So.
But I think what is fun is I think it's when you look at the game afterwards, you can always see or feel where it comes from. So it means a lot. Like it's kind of important. If you come from a strong vision and a feeling, that's what you get in the end. If you come from mechanic, it's very mechanic based. If you come from business, then it becomes crap often. Oh, Sorry.
Went straight for it. It's like probably. But yeah, no. So an interesting thing is like, how do you all get to this? Because so here's the thing: you have a vision, and now you're working on a game for like 2 years, 5 years, 8 years. Like, so you start with this tiny thing, and now you're building on top. Like, how do you keep that like, how do you find that confidence? How do you find that vision, that interesting thing? Because I think a lot of people are just kind of stuck there already, right? They want to make a game, and they're not. They have this idea, but they've never tested it. Nobody has made a game like it. Like, how do you get to your vision? How do you stay confident? Like both of those questions in equal.
For your first game, it's pretty tough. You basically have to get it validated. You have to get your own skills validated somehow before you can have any confidence. So you have. But
I think you also have.
Yeah.
I think you also have to with your first game. You need to find out if you can actually evaluate your own ideas, I feel. When you have done a few successful games, your ideas are good, but I think before that, I've seen people believe their vision 100%, and I can see them from the outside, it looks like a crap game, and I've seen other games where a strong vision, and it's a good game. The only difference is how they can see their own ideas, I feel. And to back to your question, I also feel that if you have a strong vision, when you're trying to solve anything in the company, mostly around the game, of course, but also sometimes around the business and so on, a lot of it, if you go down to original vision, you get the answer from that, which I think is really nice. If you can solve something and you have a problem trying to solve it, you look at the original vision and see if it is aligned. Then often I feel that's a good validation and good help throughout the project.
That's like it starts with why idea.
Starts with why?
Yeah. Because you don't think about what you do, you think about why you do it. And that's what you fall in love with. That's what your employees fall in love with. That's what your players fall in love with. What you actually do is important, but why you do it is way more important.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you
figure that
out?
How do you figure it out? I think you say like, well, why do we want to make a game that people play forever? Well, because it'll monetize really well. Well, is that really it? Well, because it will affect people emotionally, and it becomes a hobby, and then they get friends through that, and now they're social group, and it's actually bringing people together. Oh, that's why we want to bring people together. We're not trying to get people on a treadmill for 20 years. We want to bring people together. That you can get behind, and that comes out in the name of your game, your website, the people you hire, everything, pricing.
Do you find that why easily? Like, it's funny because when I try, because I have the same rule. I try to figure out why we're doing things. I very frequently have to ask myself like why to the answer to my own why. Like 25 times before I get there, right? Like, I want to make a roguelike. Well, why? Because because I'm watching people on Twitch play a lot of roguelikes, and it just seems really fun to have that conversation. I want to, okay, but why is that conversation? And it takes me so long to get to that answer. Like, is that your experiences as well, or?
They say it's five. The 5 whys in lean manufacturing is supposed to be about 5. To find the source of a problem, it takes about 5 whys.
I also have the idea, a theory that in the end it ends in you. So it's the same thing you get out of it, even though you do different things in different games and different companies. You know, it's always you that's in the middle of it. What is your thing in life? And for me, I really like to affect people, do big changes, get things out. I really gotten a bit addicted to that. So when I stopped playing it and looking for things to do, I could feel for sure what really turned me on and what didn't. And again, like for me, like the whole coming into games with the business, what's called business angle for me is super shallow. I cannot see that. I feel that's the worst way. It's valid, and a lot of people do it. It's not that, but I feel for me, I would just think I would stop when it got hard and earn money some other way, because I can also do that, right? The reason I stay in games and fight with getting games done or do companies that try to do difficult things is because there's like deeper things than just earning money.
What Alvaro
on the vision, on the vision, how you keep the vision along the production. I think that is a core vision that you keep, and also the whys you're saying. But the game will change from the beginning to the end, or at least for us, it's a more collaborative process on the team. So there will be also several different whys. Maybe an artist is more expressing themselves, and a game designer wants to convey an experience, and then other people who wants to send a message in the game. There will be some smaller whys, but in the end, they all create an experience. And I think the game will be better as long as when it mutates, it will be different by the end, but it should keep the same vision that you wanted to create. Maybe some parts of the vision, you couldn't make it. They're scrapped or replaced for something better. But if the core experience that we're trying to do is there, I think that will be a good product. The team will be happy and will be very enthusiastic to keep from beginning to end, especially on very long development time. For us, 2 to 3 years is a very long development time, but I'm hearing here 5 to 8 years. That's a lifetime making a game. So you should be behind that, and everybody behind the game should be very enthusiastic to add their part to it. So I think they should be open to adjust the vision as time goes, but keep the core value of it.
So if I were to ask you all, like for one of your games, it doesn't matter which one really, like what was like the part that was untouchable? Like can you give an example? Just so, because we've been talking about vision a lot, but we've not really defined for any of us what the word means, right? Like what was the untouchable? Your game.
So let's say we're making Iron Marines. So Iron Marines, you need an army of space Marines to go into the galaxy, like the police, and they solve the galaxy problems. Only that's the team. But we want to visit planets. We want to have that experience of an RTS game in a very casual way that you get really focused and you defend, you fight, and you get that adrenaline and you get that strategic thinking. They will have to have all those pillars in place, and we have to respect them. It will never become a card game because then we could not respect that pillars. Maybe there is, okay, we cannot visit too many planets because of production, blah, blah, blah. Well, we scrap that part, but we replace it with something that at least fills the gap, but we are keeping the other experience. Some people will want to have races in the game and have some message on that. Okay, we can have that. It's not the core vision of the experience, but it's a good message to have.
Charlie, Minh?
For Subnautica, it was the kind of emotional pillar of the thrill of the unknown, and then everything was based around that. We had some other ones, but they eventually got discarded. And then later, we added the nonviolent aspect of the game. That was something that was there from the beginning. It was something that really motivated me on the game, but that became core. It was like something we cannot ever violate. We can change the genre of the game before we add guns.
Dino?
The vision found for those games we're so strong, it's maybe easier to ask what could be changed. I feel, yeah.
I kind of wonder what could be changed. Can you name me a thing that could be changed? That also.
Yeah, it was quite fun. I remember me and I had a discussion early on what consoles to go on, and there was a heavy discussion because even that, he felt it was a PC game only, and it was that target group, and yeah. So, but yeah, it was a big compromise all the way through.
Minh?
So I mean, with Counter-Strike, the vision was always just about trying to recreate the sensation of being a counter-terrorist, and so that theme for me was my my vision, and I really stuck to that, and it didn't matter if it was like too realistic or too too easy or too, as long as it had that strong theme of the counter-terrorist, and also the team play aspect. So those two pillars were kind of my driving force for that, and that's kind of what I wanted to do with tactical intervention. I wanted to make it more team play focused, but I made a lot of other mistakes that kind of made the game kind of confusing for a lot of players. But yeah, I mean, I think if I were to make a new game, I would really those visions are still very dear to my heart. I really enjoy playing team play games like Battlefield as well. But I kind of prefer something a bit more smaller scale, not as large scale as Battlefield. So, but I found even the current version of Counter-Strike is becoming a bit too small scale, like 5-on-5. Like, I'm not a big fan of esports. I mean, people think I'm a esports. I created this esports thing, but personally, when I first created Counter-Strike, it was like 10-on-10. That was the perfect size match for me. It was like 20 players, just because that number of players was. It brought out a lot of interesting scenarios, and it also it kind of had a lot of team play experiences that came out of it. I find 5-on-5 is a bit too I don't know. I find it's a bit too predictable. Yeah. So I enjoy games that are a bit larger, like 10-on-10. Yeah.
I think that's neat that you said that your core for Counter-Strike was creating the experience of a counter-terrorist like job or person, because it would be really easy to look at that game and say that it was about doing something like Rainbow Six but making it like accessible. But that's you kind of did that, but like with the vision that you have, you can just keep making games in that realm. You can make like 100 more games that are all better, that each one better than the last, with that same vision, right?
That was my goal. That was my goal with tactical intervention, but I failed miserably. But I think I'll get it right the third time. If I ever did it again, I've learned a lot. I'm gonna try one more time. Yeah.
Do y'all help? Do you find so for Vlambeer, our vision is usually this very small mechanical thing. It helps us. I think, Dino, you were talking about this earlier, or Charlie, I don't remember, but it really helped us in all aspects of our development. It helped us with our marketing. It helps us with just figuring out where the game is going to be. Like, we don't really, so I personally at Vlambeer, we don't take on a project unless we can find both a creative vision to stick to and a business sort of path for it, right? Like, okay, this makes sense because this is a cool thing creatively, this is a cool thing business-wise, but usually they kind of harken back to that same core nugget. We call it a nugget at Vlambeer, don't ask me why. Is that similar for you all? Like, is your marketing also from the same place, or the way you release your game, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It all comes back to that one pillar or the two pillars or whatever the emotion is. For us, it's emotion. Like Genova Chen has been talking about for a long time. It's like emotion is like the most powerful design tool you have. If you're thinking in the lens of emotion, you're so much farther beyond all the other designers who are just stuck in mechanics. They don't even know what they're trying to make. They're just looking at mechanics. It's like, how can you lead a game team or a team of one if you don't know what emotions you're going for? If you don't know what experience you want your players to have. So that comes through. I mean, it's hard to get that through, but you have to use your marketing and every other tool at your disposal to get that emotion or a set of emotions.
Alvaro, I think you and I both work on pretty mechanics-heavy games. Like, what emotion are you going for?
Well, it's the emotion of the experience of when you play the game, or certain moments of the game, or certain scenes of the game. You're looking after that emotion. The mechanics should answer to that, or just feel really cool.
Really cool. Yeah.
I think that's definitely an emotion.
And it is a great emotion. We call it satisfaction, but what is satisfaction level on this character? So it just means make it really cool, because it mechanically wise is nothing cool, innovative to the game, but it's just really cool to use. So let's put that into the game.
I think for us, it's usually surviving being overwhelmed, like the euphoria of being overwhelmed and like overcoming it. But it's also like Flamber games are very steeped in cool as well. Like you have to feel like you're cool for completing something.
See, our games are not.
I think we're starting. So, let's try and see if we can all say one more thing about this. How about we do that before we get in trouble for running the clock? Is there anything? So, if you are a game studio, say a small game studio, a few people, and you're stuck with this, right? You're stuck in this place where there's a market, there's thousands of games coming out, and you don't know where to go from here, right? Like I think we've talked about vision a lot, because I think all of us believe that having something with a strong identity, a strong vision, a strong heart, that's what sets games apart. And it doesn't always work, like Minh said. I think all of us have experiences of games that just didn't quite land the way we think, but I do think we all agree that it's important. Like, what would you tell somebody that's like, okay, but
okay.
What
just to make one point, I think the reason tactical intervention failed wasn't because the vision was flawed. I think it was the implementation and the mechanics were too. I failed at making that accessible to the player. But I think the vision was pretty much solid. I think people kind of resonated with that, but I failed at making the mechanics easy for the players to pick up. Yeah,
that translation from vision.
Because my problem was we had a pretty poor retention rate. People would play it for a couple hours, get frustrated, and leave. So I mean, that's obviously a bad thing. And we didn't have that game in early access, so that was another terrible thing. Yeah.
So okay, let's wrap this question into you don't know your vision, or you have your vision and you want to go from there. Like those two questions: how do you get to your vision? And when you have your vision, how does the translation from vision to game? What tip would you give somebody? Let's start with, how do you get to your vision?
I mean, I would say the vision has to come from you, because you have to know why you're making games, and you might spend a couple years or longer making it. So make sure it really speaks to you. Yeah. For me, it's like thinking about what would I be happy making, regardless of any money that it makes. Like, what do I want to add to the world? What do I want to be known making? Regardless, don't put any success metrics on money or reputation or ratings or anything. Just what stands for me. Yeah. But also, just because you have that is also not enough. And this is super important now. You actually need that. You need that vision, and it needs to be, I guess, unique on top of it. It can't just be something that you like. I mean, unless you really don't care at all about the money. Mm-hmm. But once you have something that you care about, like, you might want to just tweak it a little bit to make sure, like, look at all the other games that are out there and try to find some new area that you're doing something better or unique that no one else is doing. Or, of course, there's always going to be 10 other people doing it, but find some twist on it where you can do it in a unique way. Because you want to do that early on. You don't want to do it later. You want to do that in the beginning of your game, ideally not, 2 years in.
Alvaro?
Yes, I totally agree with that. And also, there is another side. Sometimes you have a challenge. You have to make a game with some characteristics, because it may be a sequel to the game you already made. So that vision you already materialized. So what else there is to say? So you can blow up your mind trying to think of making something totally new, or you can, okay, I will have a vision inside these parameters. And that's also, for me, that it comes, so what I'm adding new to this formula that people will like, or to this concept that people will like, or how, if this is a challenging concept, this becomes a game that respects the original concept. That's where I found some motivation. So it's not always...
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you guys. We're just running a little bit over time already. We want to say something like real quick, because...
I would love just a last thing for that, if it's okay. On that point, it's just that ideas are free. Execution, I feel, is the key to the whole thing. And it's really, really important to treat vision and carrying a vision as any other skill you have in the company, as drawing or being a coder. It's really, really easy to make a shitty drawing, but it's hard to be good, and the same with vision. And if you treat it like a skill and get better at it and understand what you did wrong and then learn for the next time, I feel that's the key for me to being good at vision.
And Minh, very quickly, I think.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I was probably going to say exactly what Charlie said. I mean, like, when I come up with a game, I come up with a game that, like, I want to play, and, like, it doesn't matter if it's going to make money or not. I don't really think about it in, like, the financial aspect of it. I've always felt like I look at what's currently out there and I say, okay, I like this game, but it's missing this. So I would like to take that and then put my own spin on it. So that's how I get my vision. Yeah.
I guess that's the secret to any good game. Rami, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I did. So thank you so much, all of you, for being here. Sorry for going a little bit over time. I know you all have busy lives and we're putting like a point in your day. But I appreciate you all talking about like figuring out how to start, where to start, how to go from there. Talking about vision, I think it's an incredible, it's a difficult, complicated, but very important subject for everybody. Thank you so much, Minh, Alvaro, Dino, Charlie, for being here. And for everybody at Gamelab, hope you have an incredible rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Rami. Thank you so much, Minh, Charlie, Alvaro, and Dino. It's been amazing getting the world together from Seoul, from Seattle, Copenhagen, Amsterdam, and Montevideo in one single stage, one little stage here in Barcelona. We feel so privileged, and we'll see you soon. I mean, somewhere, somehow. Let's hope for that, okay? We can get together anytime soon. Take care. And thank you once again.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Stay safe.
Thank you.